All right. This is a Grit Talk, and my name is Rob Siegfried. I'm here to answer 7 questions. Obviously, this is my first time doing this. Thanks to all those that came out. Can't really see you from up here. Thanks for Bill for the introduction. I appreciate that, and and really try to use your discipline to hold all the applause you're going to have, as he suggested. So 7 questions. I think I heard 15 minutes. I was told 20 before, and I'm not very good at staying on either one, but I will do my best to get through this, to keep you on time, but also to allow some time for questions. I'm usually pretty open about things like that. So 7 questions. The first one is, what have you not done yet that you would like to be part of your story or included in your eulogy? So I've given a lot of thought to these questions that I got about a month ago. And I think, to me, it starts with what's happened already, what's left or what's next. First of all, I hope there's a lot next. I'm 67 years old. I plan to live to 125. You might laugh at that. But that's my goal. That's what I'm striving for. So a lot of time left, but I think there really is one specific thing that I would add to that. But I want to start at the beginning. So, Kathy, my wife, I think I do see her through the dark there, sitting up front. And I have, we've done a lot together, and we've created something I think is pretty complex. She's been an incredible partner, personally and professionally. We were living in Baltimore, and I told her I had this idea to start this firm, and it could be a pretty intimidating thing, I think, for most people, but she was always very enthused and very much by my side. I actually cajoled her into starting to help me in the beginning because we were both moving, and to help me out at the firm, which she did. So we really started it together. We walked in with the phone in my right hand and phone jack in my left hand. We sat on the floor and waited for the furniture to show up. So it was a totally grassroots operation. There's been a lot of struggles through that. Shortly therein, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, really serious situation. She survived that, thank God, and we were able to have 3 amazing children right after that. Not right after that, like 5 years after that. And so we started the firm in '88, and then we got hit with that. The firm was also a lot. I would tell you that I spent the first 11 years with what I would call the cash devil on my shoulder. Some would call it entrepreneurial fear. It never leaves you. I heard somebody give an example of this. They were a Navy fighter pilot over Vietnam, and it would be terrifying, but they would clear the zone. All they had to do was land back on the aircraft carrier, and things would be calm and peaceful and nice for them for the next day or two. Entrepreneurial fear never leaves you, and it seems to haunt you like at 2 or 3 in the morning. And I lived with that for 11 years. Will I be able to make payroll? Will we pay our bills from 1988 to 1999? During that time, in the mid-90s, we had 3 children. And so Kath, would step back a little bit from work, but was always there supporting. And, we have these 3 amazing kids, and the firm just starts to turn the corner in 1999. Things start to settle in, and I see this amazing opportunity for us to go national. And I seized upon it. We went national like that because I was helping PwC with this major project, and convinced them that maybe we could use their offices around the country. I could do this for them. We could go out, the team could do this. We could, we ended up hiring 300 people and opened in, we're in 19 cities today. We actually opened like 25 helping them out, but settled in this 19 throughout the country. And so it was a really big commitment to make. I knew that was going to be difficult to do it. I had no idea starting the firm would be as difficult as it was. And I certainly had no idea that this was going to be as difficult as it was. And I knew it was going to take me away from my family. And I had this memory. My daughter was also here. She was 7 years old. And I kind of put it to her. I said, Jacqueline, I've got this opportunity to take firm national. It might not work. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm going to travel a lot. I'm not going to be home as much. But if it works out, it'll put the family in a stronger position. And we'll be able to, I'm sure I described some vacations we took and things like that to do more things like that. But I'm going to be away a lot. And I remember looking at me, she goes, well, you'll be home on the weekends, right? So that was my answer. She was also supportive of the expansion. And so it took 7 years to land that plane. It took until 2011 before we really got out of the woods with that, which was 23 years after the firm started. So I mentioned before, we've created a pretty complex thing, the size of this business and so forth. And I realized that I lost a lot. I lost a lot of time with them during this period. We are still close. We've always been close. We're close now. And realizing the complexity of what it is, and they all have kind of come back. My two boys work for the firm pretty much right out of college. They're 31 and 28. Jacqueline just joined the firm in January. And I realized there's these things that we've created this firm that is, we don't want to sell it. And how do I best position that for when I'm gone, or Kathy and I are gone? How do I best position it for my family if I'm gone, or for my kids, so they can be responsible, owners of this business? And there's also a lot of complex stuff with succession planning that I have helped many people with and many clients over the years, but now it's facing me, and it's probably about as complex a situation as I've seen. And there's also the whole estate planning part of this, and realizing that, I had a wonderful upbringing. My parents are tremendous, and they gave me the tools that I needed to go off, but I've kind of got my kids in a different situation. And so what I'm seeing is explaining this to them. They've all really leaned in. They come to all of our board meetings now. We have a family office, and I'm seeing that this is an incredible opportunity to kind of keep building and bring us closer in doing it. And I was at a meeting at a conference recently. I was with 3 other entrepreneurs, and I realized all 3 of these individuals don't like their business. In fact, I think they hate their business. They can't wait to sell and get out of it. I love my business. I'm not looking to jump out or anything like that. And I thought how important that was. And I was explaining how my children got involved. And this guy his reaction was, wow, these family office meetings sounds like family dinner. And in a lot of ways, I think that's true. And so I think I feel a sense of responsibility to help prepare them for, the part of the family office owns the firm. It has other investments and so forth, and all this complexity. And I also realized that given my background, my history starting the firm, I'm in the best position of anybody to help prepare them for this. So I see this as a great opportunity. I guess what I'm trying to say about what my story that's not finished, I really want to help prepare my kids to be able to be, not to look at this as some, albatross, but something that can really be great for them, but also enjoy the journey doing it with them in the meantime. So that's probably what I feel that my unfinished business would be. And I think it's even more so since I missed so much time, I think, with them trying to grow this business earlier on. Second question, how has failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure? Again, quite a bit of thinking about this. This wasn't a short list to choose from. There have been many, mistakes are part of the landscape. Any entrepreneur knows that. You're trying new things, you're creating something brand new, trying to create value, trying to see what the market wants, try to see what your employees want, how do you put this together and grow something successfully. It's a multifaceted situation. I mentioned we went national in 2004. We had 75 people in the talent delivery service business of the Siegfried Group at the time. We signed a contract to deliver 200 people to PricewaterhouseCoopers throughout the country. And it's a pretty daunting task. I felt confident that we could do it from a recruiting standpoint because of the uniqueness of our model. I thought we'd be able to do it. It was obvious the branding that would rub off on us. Who the heck's the Siegfried Group in San Francisco or New York or Atlanta or Miami or Chicago? But everybody knew who PricewaterhouseCoopers was. And while they're a very different firm than us, they're a very bureaucratic, large organization. They have a very high quality reputation. And I knew us being associated would be great for that. I mean, how it goes, not only would they recommend us, they're using us themselves. And so we were able, to pull that off. In fact, They came back and asked us for as many as 350 people. It went so well. We actually delivered 332 people. And when the dust settled in January of 2005, we had over 400 people, and kind of went like that. And I was very keenly aware that we did not get it all right. There's no way you're going to hire 300 people and get 300 people that fit at the firm and 300 stars. It's just not going to work. And in fact, I said, even if we got it 90% right, that means there's 30 souls that we've hired that are working for us right now that really don't belong here. And we need to figure out a way to identify what that was. Biggest failure, we did not handle this well at all. We were, in a word, weak. We couldn't even tell people that needed to improve, you need to improve. We had this whole system, you're highly effective, you're competent, we dodged around, which is amazing to me because my father never had a problem telling me I need to improve growing up. I never had a coach that had trouble telling me to improve. I didn't have many teachers that had a problem, giving me the grade they thought I deserved if it wasn't a good one. But this was a real problem for our organization. And sad to say, we did not deal with it effectively in 2005, 2006, 2007. And it wasn't until the financial crisis of 2008 when reality really hit us right in the face. And we ended up having to exit 200 people. I think we had about 500 total at the time. And not one of those people we exited was excellent and outstanding. They were solid people, they were good people, but they're no longer either bringing value to the firm or they had not been performing at a really high level that we had, and we kept rationalizing it. And what's worse, we were weakening our brand because we actually deploy these people to our clients, which was a terrible thing to do. And so we had to face it. We certainly didn't exit the people that we thought were the strongest. And I got a question right at the end of 2009. What's the number one thing you could do to increase the value of the firm? I knew the answer immediately. It was make sure that we only deploy excellent and outstanding people. And how come we can't do this? And we developed this thing called performance value salability model, performance value leadership model for people that weren't deployed. And it was all based on a question. Do you have any concern about this person's performance, their values, or their salability? If the answer is yes, you had no option but to say, well, your needs improvement. And then what are we going to talk about how you improve from there? And CPAs, financial people, they're not HR experts. They're typically not leadership experts. They really have a hard time delivering this news, but they also don't lie. So they really had a hard time dodging this. They knew the truth was this person needs to improve, so they would say it. We implemented that at the beginning of 2010, and in 2010 the firm made more money than it ever made. We made a cumulative $1 million in 21 years. Not very profitable. My brother likes to say, well, we were a nonprofit organization for 21 years, not because we wanted to be, we just couldn't figure out how to make money. Now we were reinvesting and expanding and so forth. We made $2 million in 2010, and we made $8 million in 2011. I wonder if the PVS had something to do with it. It's probably our most effective piece of intellectual property that we have. So the biggest failure was not being stronger as a leader. I knew the problem in 2005, and I would estimate at the time it wasn't 10%, it was 20% that we didn't get right, and we just didn't deal with it. So since then, I have followed advice I've gotten many times. Problems don't solve themselves, and zero in and solve them. Third question, in the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life? I'd say the biggest one has been me getting comfortable with the concept of a debt finance distribution. What is that? It's an idea that was brought to me in 2015. Rob, we could borrow money. Let's say it's 3 times our EBITDA. And I don't know what it would have been then. Let's say it was $16 million or something. We could borrow $50 million and distribute that to ourselves. And we had worked all this time, almost 30 years by then, to build the balance sheet, to build the equity in the business to $50 million. Why the heck would we distribute it all out and take it to zero? I think I said something like, that's the stupidest thing I've heard in a long time, or, I'm not doing that. Why are you wasting my time bringing this to me? So in 2020, I was out, and we have a place in Utah, in Deer Valley. My wife and I were getting ready to take a hike. And we had, been looking, our bank, we had outgrown our regional bank. We were looking to get a little bit more, like borrow 60, 70 million on our facility instead of 50. And JP Morgan had agreed to give us this arrangement. I was very impressed and pleased that they felt confident to do that with us. I'm ready to sign a dotted line, but I had a contact with a guy, Ted at Citizens, and as a courtesy, I've known Ted for a long time, I took the call thinking this will be a quick call to hear about this debt finance distribution that I definitely don't want to do. And so on that call, I got on a call and there were 16 boxes on the Zoom call. I thought there would be like Ted and one other guy. And I said, Kath, it's going to be a little longer than 10 minutes. And during that call, what they said is they wanted to lend us $150 million, which shocked me. Actually, they said they wanted to do $100 million, a term loan. I'm like, wow, I guess a rich uncle is going to write me a check. I'll have to operate the business differently. What do you mean? I said, well, I usually have a credit line. We're going to give you one of those too for $50 million. And I said, why would you lend me 2.5 times what JP Morgan would lend me? We're not going to question what they're doing, but I can tell you why we'll do it, Rob. We think your business is worth $750 million. We don't know you that well, but we don't think you're that bad, naive, stupid to waste your $600 million to eat into our $150. And I guess I had a shocked look on my face for many reasons, and one of them was, I didn't think my business was worth that. And what do you think it's worth? I said, I guess $500 million, but I didn't really care because I'm not selling it. It didn't matter to me. And how'd you get that? Well, I took our profit times 9 plus the book value, got $500 million. Well, your multiples are much more than 9, Rob, and it's EBITDA, not profit, which I knew, and your business is worth $750. We started going down this path when I realized that. I own 2/3 with my family. How do I get the liquidity for all these other people? We had certainly built something more than, the family farm or the corner grocery store. How do I get the liquidity there for the other 33%? And I had this idea of going public. Fortunately, I got off of that idea. And then I had this idea of selling a minority interest. And we were actually talking to Bain Capital. They sent an unsolicited offer for $200 million for 20% of the firm. And that's when I knew the business was more than $1 billion. They wouldn't lead with their best offer. And that's when it hit me about the complexity of this. And I would tell you, if I talked to you 6 years ago, I'm going to run this firm forever. In fact, I would say it all the time. And people obviously were looking at me saying, well, clearly you're not going to run it forever, Rob, because you're going to die, even at 125. And so I started thinking about, well, I'm going to run until I'm 75. And I started realizing I've got to position the firm to operate without me. And the sooner I can do that, the better off it will be. And so we ended up looking at that, and we finally came back to the debt finance distribution, that stupid idea that they had given me, my partner, 6 years before. And we were able to do that and monetize. And I now have about 35% of my net worth is outside of the Siegfried Group. And 10 years ago, I had my 401k outside of the Siegfried Group. That was it. And so this diversification has been freeing, but it's also come with a lot of responsibility as part of this. And so I guess the lesson was this idea that I was so sure was so bad has been almost life-changing. I was at JP Morgan yesterday for this founders conference, like 220 founders. And I went up to the top 2 people that run the commercial unit. And I said, I don't understand why you guys aren't selling this debt finance distribution to more entrepreneurs. It's not for every business, but if you have consistent EBITDA and so forth, it's been absolutely life-changing. Instead of making it a once-in-a-lifetime transaction. The Siegfried Group is our most valuable asset. Didn't have to sell any of it. I basically just refinanced it. And so not only was that life-changing for me, but it just reminded me once again, sometimes when you think you're absolutely certain and right about something, you're not. What activities make me lose track of time? Talking. My son once said, somebody said, Stephen, what do I do when people don't pay attention when I'm giving a presentation? He goes, you keep talking? Yeah, that wasn't the answer I was looking for. No, I call on you, but that was probably the right answer. But in any event, probably the number one thing is spending one-on-one time with my wife. It's when I lose time. I think time with my family, I lose time. I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of activities. I love to play golf. I work pretty hard, but I do find time to get on the golf course often. I love to ski, and I make time to do that. I love to hike. There's a lot of things like that. I love to dine out. I'm trying to do a little less of that these days. There's a lot of things I think. I keep listening to my heart about things that really rock my boat and do them. And I love thinking about ideas and being strategic. And I probably love more than anything else this phrase I have about inspiring transformation in myself and others, because I think that's how you can live your best life and your highest life. And put yourself in a position of strength when you're doing what you always love, and then you're better for other people. What book do you most often give or recommend, and how has that book influenced you? I started the firm in '88, and shortly thereafter I became aware of a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, as this says. I learned so many things about that book from reading that book. Things like striving for win-win solutions for people. Doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. I learned about think first, understand, then be understood, and try to work on active listening, something I continue to try to do. I learned about, being production with golden eggs versus production capability, taking care of the goose, this long-term view, begin with the end in mind. I learned a lot of things, but what I learned mostly was this concept of character ethic versus personality ethic, and how strong character ethic is. And I have continued to use that as a real guidepost in what I do. I believe to become a better individual leader, and live a better life is no more complicated than character ethic. But it's really hard to do. And I continue to work to come up with systems to allow people to dream and get the energy and get really clear about what their dreams are, because the only way you're going to accomplish that is by getting in touch with your character ethic. So that book has had a huge impact. What have you purchased or have been given in the last year valued under $200 that most positively impacted your life? It's just this gizmo that my daughter gave me that, I take this concoction. I take 10 different things and, mix them all together. And it's about 16 ounces. And I'll drink it right away. So I was like a spoon, stirring it up. And she gave me a mixer. It's like basically a cup this big, and it's got a, blender in the bottom of it, little battery operated thing. I use it every day. That's my routine. I go and get the cup. I put everything in there. Sometimes I take it with me. I don't have to drink it right away. I'm up at the office. I realize I haven't stirred it up for a while. Hit the thing, zzz. But it's also part of the routine. I've also learned that doing little things every day on a consistent basis is how you get exponential growth. Think about it, investing money, the same thing happens. So just think this little habit of doing it, and it works together. So thank you, Jacqueline. That was the answer I had for that question. I would have talked about the Oura Ring, but I think you paid more than that for that. Last question. If you could broadcast a message to everyone in the world knowing it would be received and remembered, what would it be? So I, combined some of the things that I talked about before. I keep reflecting back, driving in here today, and I parked in a parking lot across the street. I used to work for Colonial Parking, and I used to run those parking garages, the one down the government center, the one at the medical center. I got promoted from cashier to supervisor, which meant I got to clean the place up and sweep up the cigarette butts, run the Zamboni machine to pick stuff up. It was nice for studying at times, but that was my job. I was the banquet bartender at the Hotel DuPont next door, and came back here in '88 to start this business. Grew up in Claymont, went to Mount Pleasant High School, UD, and I just keep reflecting back, like, how is all of this possible? How could we grow a service company to $600 million in revenues, have 1,400 employees, have a national footprint, be comfortably profitable? How is this possible? And I just keep coming back to the only thing I can come up with is that I'm going to go back to these character ethic traits and these lessons that I learned. And I keep looking at people that I think have really lived a successful life. And I keep coming back to this. I looked at political leaders, I looked at my parents, and I see this character ethic. Some complex lives, some simple lives. My parents are very simple people. And then I thought, wow, leadership, character ethic. I was raised Roman Catholic, not here to preach religion to anybody, but Jesus Christ is a pretty effective leader. If getting other people to believe what you want them to believe is part of leadership, he's got over 2 billion people believing he was the Son of God 2,000 years after he's dead. And he died at like 32 or 33 years old. That's leadership. How did he do it? I'd say he did it with kindness, did it with love, incredible conviction, generosity, caring, humility. You can go on and on. And so I think back, like, how could all this happen? And I think it is no more complicated than somehow sitting in church all those days, and I did not go because I wanted to, I went because I had to. Dad was pretty serious about that. I think I just kind of soaked this stuff up, and I'm just trying to live that. Now, a lot of people say, Rob, I don't think Jesus Christ was the Son of God. You're making my point even more. You don't even think it was a divine intervention, but it's still the result was the same. So when I think about, why our firm has been what's happened with our firm and where it is, I really think it's that I keep trying to follow those basic premises. And I think if you want to live the best life you can, you just keep getting in touch with your character ethic. And one thing I know also is the better you become in your life, the stronger you become, the better you are for everybody else in your life. My dad always taught me, Robbie, work as hard as you can to get in a position of strength, and you can weigh that in many ways, and I think having solid character ethic is how you weigh it. And then work as hard as you need to stay there. And so, I think that's my message to people. Just try to be the best version of yourself. And I meant back, my primary aim is to inspire transformation of myself and others. I'm just trying to help myself and other people do that. So with that, I'm open to questions. All right.